about, you mentioned your training. Okay. So you talked about 2 days and you talked about kind of how you're doing things now. Let's dive into that right now. Just break it down. Like what's your training? Like how are you
Okay.
doing that one body part a
Yep.
week? Like where are you at
Yep.
with
Yep.
your mindset on that?
Yeah. Okay. So I've had to get creative with this. So I picked three types of exercise, right? One type is obviously Pilates. Okay. Pilates is its own practice. Another type is bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is its own practice. And then the third type is that stationary type of cardio. The exercise that I find myself actually doing the most is the cardio. It's strange. Like I've been waking up. There's a gym like 2 minutes from me, the Planet Fitness. I just go put my headphones in, and it's like first thing I do. I eat a few blueberries, piece of bread, peanut butter shake, just old school light meal. Come
Yeah.
back home, make a meal, work, get organized, and then I hit my second session, whether that be a Pilates session or that be a bodybuilder session. Morning cardio, and then I alternate between the two. My
Mm.
bodybuilding split looks something like this. I've broken it down to focus, right? It's not that I can't do more. It's just that my
Mm.
brain focus gets bad after a while. So here's how I focus best on body parts. Chest by itself, I focus best. Arms together, I actually do
Mm.
well. It's a long session, but together they do well. Delts alone, gotta do delts alone. I can't do delts in anything else. Gotta do back alone. I do legs. I do all of the legs.
Ah.
Arms and legs are sort of like my longest days.
Bro, that's very different than how you did things in the past.
I would always do 2 arm days, 2 leg
You do
days.
the power hyper, like that was at one point the
Yep,
thing, right? So
yep,
everything
I
gets
do
hit twice
too.
a week. So what's your
Right.
rationale now behind this? Is that
I don't have
mainly
the time. I don't have the time, right? Like I'm
ah
older. I have to spend time in relationships with friends and they have babies and I'm just
right?
old. Life just is asking for more. And so
Yeah.
the way I do it basically is I learned this from Mike Zordos, right? So every bodybuilder is like addicted to this idea of a 7 day split. They're like addicted to this idea. I've extended mine. It could be 9 days and I run it anywhere that it falls. If I have to do chest, delts, back, legs, and arms, that's 5 sessions. There's no way I could do those 5 sessions and then do Pilates. I don't have the time anymore. And so what I do is that I try to run those 5 days. Sometimes I get it done in 7 days, sometimes. But if I do that, I generally didn't do any Pilates that week or I didn't do enough cardio that week. And so I've been running it kind of like to 8 or 9 days. And so no week looks the same. Instead of just trying to say I'm trying to catch the week, I'm just trying to catch the 8, 9 day wave. And it's still a cycle. And so the idea is be available to training all the time. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Let them fall how they fall. Let them go how they go. Stick to the 8, 9 day cycle though. I can get everything in 8, 9 days. It's not the
Gotcha.
same as it used to be as hitting everything twice a week in 7 days, right?
What do you
Like,
mean by that? In terms of like you development or just
I would say it's not the same, literally, from a time perspective, right? Like when I
okay.
used to do legs twice a week, I can spend time more intimately on a muscle. And so I've exchanged all of that for old school bodybuilding. 3 or 4 sets, RPE 9.5. I've got to bring it when I bring it, but I haven't been healthy enough in the past to do that type of training. You know what I
Yes,
mean? I've
gotcha,
had to do a
gotcha.
lot of top sets, drop sets, a lot of trickery and volume to get it done. But
Yeah.
now, since all joints feel healthy, since everything feels healthy, since I know how to appropriately move a muscle, it's when you start getting all fucking excited in bodybuilding that you start curling and then you start lifting your delt, right? And now you're over tightening that attachment and you start doing all these weird things. You start rowing and doing a little it's like you start doing all these sort of dance movements in bodybuilding that are unnecessary, but that's not
Right.
necessarily good for the stability of the joint, right? Like if you were doing overhead tricep extensions, let's say, and this elbow moves at all in space, that's not a stable joint. This elbow has to be completely still as it moves through space. So I've been finding those rules through Pilates and just getting after it. And I take out some things. Obviously, I'm not doing all my core and spinal things in bodybuilding. It's not meant for that. There's a different set of rules. You have to know what's what and where everything fits. So that's kind of what the bodybuilding has looked like. And I told you kind of about the cardio. So that's bodybuilding. And bodybuilding split those 5 days within generally 8 days. I just generally need one more day on the week, right? 8 to 9 days. I do those as I wake up, right? I've been huge on trying to get back to the feeling of this thing. I think like when I first joined bodybuilding, like the first in I had on bodybuilding was like the Wayne Norton side, right? So I've always been from like the science-based communities. And I think that's been my leg up. I get the information and then I applied super hard work to it. But there's still a feeling with this thing, right? I think that's the best thing about bodybuilding in muscles in general is that there's information that you get from these skeletal muscles. And I just been going off when I feel like training and when I feel feel like resting, right? So I kind
Mm.
of give myself daily option on training, right? It's like, I mean, most days I say, I can't wait to get to this session. And then the main hours that I spend on training are, like I said, cardio and bodybuilding. That's what I love to do. The Pilates has been anywhere sort of in that 8 days, once or twice. This is now. When I was in school, it was, 8 hours on the way. It was just hours and hours and hours of
Yeah, of
Pilates,
course. Of
right? I was
course.
specializing in Pilates to learn it. But this is now, at most, I might do 2 sessions. I'm not just trying to do Pilates. I'm here for the fertilizer, and I take it very serious, and I do. But I either get trained, I still have a trainer, the one who got me started and told me to go to school, and I train myself. Like I said, I have my space and things like that. So what I do with the Pilates is that I go and I discover these movements, and I try to find things, and I try to figure them out, and I use all the cues and things, and then I go to my trainer, and then she just says, nope, don't do that. Or she might say something like, put your sacrum down a little more, but put this up a little more, and tie this up. And it's like she's a dancer, right? Dancers hit poses, basically. And the Pilates exercises are more like poses than anything. So in a pose, right, you'll see that, I'm just making a pose. In this pose, you'll see that maybe something's missing. It's just like bodybuilding. It's a pose, It's
Right.
like they're just complex poses. And they're poses that have motion on them as well. It's like putting on a little resistance on a pose, a concentric or an eccentric on a pose, like a dance bodybuilding. It's like kind of like a thing type mix in one. In the teacher's corrections are everything. The way that you get corrected in Pilates is live. So they are visually looking at you, telling you what visually to do, and then they also place their hands on you. And so it's a live sort of thing. It's confusing, like I said, in the language portion, because I had to go to school to figure out what they were even saying. They were speaking this other language. And so once I've learned that, now I know what she means. I'm hoping now that I'm on dry land that I can make something of this method. So I'm sort of in the phase of just testing now. I have my time back, and in those Pilates sessions, I learn a great deal of information. I may do a certain exercise in Pilates that required a lot of rhomboids or something that day, and then I say, I can't wait to try this in my bodybuilding. It excites me.
At your point in the career, it's very
Oh my
important.
gosh, it's so important,
Been doing it
right?
for 20 years, right?
And so
So it's
that's the
like,
thing, right? Like when you were saying earlier, like who is this for? I think if you have 10 years of gains in you, I just don't think it's that important. If you're like brand new, I just don't think that's important. I first started lifting weights seriously at, I want to say 14 years old. It's a long time, and it just requires more tools to get more depth at some point. I think those first few years, the body will fascinately sort of do it automatically, even if you're wrong.
let me ask you this though. What would your ideal setup be then right now? Like if your goal is you want to eke out those last bit of, assuming it's there, of muscle growth, assuming that's the goal as well. What would your ideal setup be at this point with the information and knowledge you have? How important do you think the setup is relative to the execution, what you're talking about, just this whole episode, basically?
What do you mean by setup more specifically?
How frequently you're hitting a body part, the amount of volume you're doing, all the things that generally we talk about in this industry, but which is not what you're preaching at the moment, given your current experiences with Pilates and your goal with trying to stimulate muscles better, basically get muscles to contract better in different positions.
Yeah. Since I'm not competing anymore, I think my language there has changed as well. I'm going back to feeling it, right? Like that's kind of what I'm looking for. I wasn't a professional athlete on accident. I purposely must have liked it, obviously. And I still like it. I just don't like the competing part. I think my goal basically now is like, I just want to go back to being a professional athlete that doesn't compete. I see why Tom Brady retires early. I'd like to just enjoy some of my last youthful years working out hard as fuck, however I want to, just enjoying it, just doing my own thing, right? I've never had my own permission with bodybuilding, right? I've had to always write into the WNBF or IFPA or this and that, and say they sort of had a stake in my athletic venture as much as I benefited from their organizations. It's a mutual relationship. But now I'm sort of a free agent athlete. I feel like I just want to like take my knowledge and skills and do whatever I feel like. That's honestly it. Like I'm just sort of free.
You don't really care about eking out this last bit of muscle growth.
What I care about is just being in it. It's my passion. It's my life. It's awesome. What I want more than anything is just to be in love with it and have it and be grateful for it and get like super good at it, because that's the way I like to do it. I'm not interested in another way. Just be perfect. Be like, have my food down. I'm just interested in doing it for me for once and just seeing what that looks like.